talking about all kinds of weird technology with Joseph Farrell, who's been knocking our socks off here for the last couple of hours. And I'm going to have one more question, and then we're going to open it up to our listeners to call in. Joseph, I guess, you were talking about the possibility that pockets of Nazis were able to get out of Germany, maybe set up bases and communities elsewhere and carry on, and maybe they took some of this technology with them. That's a scary proposition. If they were able to bring this technology, that it's not only in our hands, but it's in theirs, and I would presume if they have it, then maybe the Russians could have it. Any indication that someone else has it other than us?
Oh yes, definitely. I think you have to look, and I get into this in the SS Brotherhood of the Bell quite a bit. I think you have to look to nations like Russia, France, Great Britain, Germany, certainly, Japan, being the principal ones that would have had some handle on this technology after the war, particularly the Russians. So yes, the question is an excellent one, and I think the answer has to be yes.
Okay, we're going to open it up now. We're going to our wild card line, Carolyn in Michigan. Good morning, Carolyn.
Good morning.
What's on your mind?
Hi. Well, I'm just fascinated by what I'm hearing. I can't believe I got through. I read a book years ago by journalist Jeff Baker called Checkmate, Game of the Princes. Checkmate as in chess, C-H-Q-U-E. Anyway, it's about how the government's getting ready to slam dunk us into the New World Order. It's about the world mafia. It's about how in the late 50s, early 60s, they began building these detention centers, which they have everywhere now. They hold between 40 and 50,000 people each. They're on government land. You don't dare go on it. They're called blue zones. One-way turnstile gates, barbed wire fencing faces in, not out. In other words, to keep people in. And the book goes on to explain how he went to congressmen and senators. So what is this? What's going on? And long story short, my question is, I'm wondering if this is a piece of this everything that your guest is talking about. Has he ever read the book? Does he know about these government land detention centers that hold between 40 and 50,000 people each? The largest in 2 states can hold 80,000 people. Unfinished railroad tracks in the back. And he goes on to talk about many other things in this book, Checkmate, The Game of Princes, which is about the world mafia.
Joseph, have you
heard of him?
Yeah, have you heard of that book, Joseph?
Yeah, Carolyn, actually I have the book, and I have read it. In answer to your question, I think that, yes, we do have to look at the Nazi Party, the Nazi ideology, as being self-consciously and by its own explicit description a party that was enamored of what we would now call New World Order. That was actually a phrase often found on Hitler's lips during his speeches. So, yes, I think that there is a connection, although I would hesitate to speculate any further. I simply don't have enough basis in research to go much further than that. But I think that there is a connection, certainly.
Carolyn, did you have another question along these lines?
Hello?
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 Yes, Carolyn, did you have another question?
Oh, yes, Waco. Waco was an exact duplicate of what Hitler did to a little Jewish community, saying they were hoarding guns and molesting children. And the government, which is not supposed to attack its own people, went in and did the same exact thing to this little Jewish village that happened at Waco. And then they went in and covered everything up and bulldozed it exactly the same, and then came out with a propaganda movie, as they did with David Koresh, to kind of get the populace to go along with more accepting of what happened. And I thought, wow, that 50 years to the day, and in the same way the Nazis did it. So it's just, boy, we're living in times that are just absolutely, we've got to have the knowledge of what is really going on.
There's spooky stuff going on out there. Anything else to add to that, Joseph?
Well, the only thing I would add is that I think if we look at some of the things going on in this country, it is hardly accidental. if we took over a group of Nazis into this country in our scientific projects and basically created a rogue element inside of our intelligence community so shortly after the end of the war. I don't think it's an accident at all. If we take over the science that they developed and the technology that they developed, to a certain extent, we're making the Faustian bargain, and we're taking over the ideology as well.
We're going to go to our west of the Rockies line, Rod, in Hermosa Beach. What's on your mind, Rod?
Good evening, George. I want to say very quickly here, first of all, I want to thank you so much for putting your own professional reputation and your own life basically here on the line for doing the work that you've done with Robert Scott Lazar. I thank you so much for bringing that material here to the American public, because you're a serious journalist, and I thank you so much for doing that. Very quickly here, I'm an aeronautical engineer, and I was involved in some research here regarding the ME-262, as well as a plane called the ME-264. And I had an opportunity to go very extensively here into the National Archives and do a lot of research in the course of what I was doing. Now, I want to ask Mr. Farrell here if he's ever had this happen to him. When I wanted to look at certain records of the Ahnenerbe, I was told, despite the fact here that I had a relatively high security clearance, I was able to do my work regarding the aeronautical aspects of these aircraft. This was classified at a level beyond rhyolite, if you know what that term means. In other words, this is one of the most absolutely highest classifications here in the National Archives right now, and that I was completely barred from looking at any of these records. Have you ever looked into the records of the Ahnenerbe in the National Archives? That's my question.
No, I have not looked other than in a very cursory fashion. However, I will say this in kind of a loose-ended confirmation of your experience. Most of my attempts to deal with these records have met just basically a stone wall. And I have a few good contacts that I use to get me other information out of the archives. And again, the story is the same. So there's something going on with the Ahnenerbe to this day that we, for some reason, still consider a high national security item, and I have no idea what it would be other than to speculate and guess that it has some connection to this type of physics that the Nazis were investigating. Beyond that, I can't say anything more other than to confirm your basic experience.
Well, I'd be very surprised if our government did release documents on this stuff, and
Right.
Not surprised at all that they're classified. Thanks for the question, Rod. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with more of your questions for our guest. I'm George Knapp on Coast to Coast AM. I was saying, welcome back to Coast AM. I'm George Knapp, your guest host, and my guest tonight is Joseph Farrell, author of the SS Brotherhood of the Bell. And now we're going to go back to the phone lines with Frank on the first-time caller line. Frank in Houston, Texas. What's going on?
Good morning, George. Good morning, Joseph.
Good morning, Frank.
I wish I would have postponed my trip about a week. I actually just got back from Las Vegas.
Oh, boy.
Well, my question to you, Joseph, is there anything to suggest that some of the Jews imprisoned at Auschwitz might have been unknowingly, or knowingly for that matter, involved with the construction of the Bell or the day-to-day operations of the quote-unquote synthetic rubber plant?